I hope you guys are having a good spring break week. This is an online class, and I wanted to provide some information here and go over. I promised last week that I would look at um, each of the carvings that have been turned in, and we're going to do that. And I also wanted to share, um, we had several PowerPoint presentations that were turned in. I want to go through that as well. Uh, I wanted to also we'll talk about what's going on for the rest of the semester and uh, go over some of the other things that we need to talk about. So I wanted to prepare you for the next couple um, modules, and I also wanted to remind everybody to get the stuff that you've done turned in, submit. If you see a 0, find out what it's for and submit it. If I don't give you full points for something, look at the notes that I've made. If they don't make sense, uh, talk to me. I'm more than happy to talk back and forth via email or a Teams meeting or video conference, whatever we need to do so that you can find out what needs to happen so you can get all the points for the class. You guys work too hard to just settle for a 0, so don't settle for a 0. I put that in there to remind you that you've got to turn something in and submit something. So do that. If you have issues or have problems and you need extra help or whatever, that's fine. Just let me know. And I wanted to mention too, there's a couple different video assignments for this class. One is the PowerPoint. We're going to see 4 examples of that today. And then we also have the self-critique and peer critique. And we'll talk about both of those after we look at the sculptures and watch the video presentations. In all of those, we don't ever have to see your face. When you do the critique of artwork, have a screenshot that, share the screen of the image of the artwork and then talk off screen. If you don't want to use your voice, you don't have to. Write the script. I would say it to yourself, read it aloud to yourself to make sure that the time fits within the parameters. It's 3 to 5 minutes for the peer and the self critiques, and 5 to 7 minutes for this PowerPoint. Once you get that timed out right and everything like that, you can record somebody else saying it. Doesn't have to be your voice. Doesn't even have to be a human voice. We've had people in this class who have used AI with manufactured voices, with celebrity voices, and even with cartoon character voices, like Elmer Fudd, I think was the most fun. But it doesn't need to be your voice. You won't ever show yourself on the screen, but there does need to be a record of these processes, and that's why I require the video format. And that's MP4, MOV, or WAV. My system will not process any other kind of file, and we do need the file. One person submitted just the video without the file, and that's working, but I really would much prefer the file itself so that I can, and the reason why I need that is so I can post it to YouTube so everybody can see it. And today we're also going to be talking about Plato's Allegory of the Cave, and I will be adding that into the attendance for this class, for this session of the class. And for your attendance points, you'll write one thing that you learned about watching that 4.5-minute video of Plato's Allegory of the Cave, and 4 things about this video that we're talking about right now. The reason why we're going to talk about Plato's Allegory of the Cave is because we're going to be doing conceptual art in a bit. And I'm thinking that the way I want to do this is first we're going to look at the carvings that everybody's turned in. Then we're going to look at the PowerPoint videos that have been turned in. And then I'll talk about Plato's Allegory of the Cave and what's happening next for the rest of the semester. So, and I'm suspecting that we're going to be here for about an hour is all tonight. I would be really surprised if anybody showed up tonight because you guys are supposed to be enjoying your spring break. Okay, so I'm going to just share my screen now and share with you the carvings that have been turned in. Right now, the carving is we need to make something that is a biomorphic abstraction. We talked about we can't have any flat surfaces of that original block, and it needs to be sanded smooth so we can apply paper mache. We'll apply paper mache after the next module. Now, looking at this, I love the form. I think the form is excellent. It has a lot of those organic components that I really like. I mean, these look kind of like bent insect legs, almost kind of folded over. I think that is absolutely fascinating. So the form itself is captivating and really nicely done on this. The only thing that I think of that this needs to work on is sanding. And what I'm talking about, you can see some of the tool marks here, and some of these edges are a little bit harsh, and maybe that is intentional, but I think you can see the tool marks here, some of the chattering here, tool marks right back here, tool marks right here. Those need to all disappear. If we can get rid, sand out all the tool marks, and um, Sharon was really good at putting the sandpaper in all these um, kits, but if you need a finer grit sandpaper, go ahead and use a scrap, find a finer grit or a finer grit of sandpaper. Dollar Tree sells that pretty cheap, and you can find it at other places, or you can bum it off of somebody. But I would definitely recommend sanding it down right through here and right through there. And if you do that and make it so that everything looks intentional, people are not going to question the variation of the edges, the edge work that you have. Now, I did say no sharp edges, and this person did a really good job of doing that. And we also talked very much, there cannot be any of the original flat surface of the original block. And this person did a really good job of that too. And I love how you can see how where they come in and make the grooves, they come in deep and then kind of smooth things out. So there's a transition from that groove to out instead of just cutting in lines. And I love the fact that this does not feel flat. I mean, it doesn't feel like it's only on one plane. I think that this person did really well in that. And the only thing that I would want to see more of is sanding. The photograph itself is really nicely done with that sheet behind it and everything. Well done. Now this one, the person did not have a sheet. They photographed it on paper towels, and that's okay. But it's not as, kind of the level that we're looking for to present your art. Now, the only issue that I have with this one is, well, before I get into that, I'll say I love the form. The form is really, really interesting. I love this organic line component around there and this little fin coming off up on top. I love the hole through it. I love how they've carefully sanded this so that you can see the surface is not completely predictable. You have these undulating spaces here and there. This will be really good when it's mounted upright at the bottom here. Right now, it looks like it's laying on the ground. The person took a photo standing over it. I would recommend preparing this so that you can put like skewers in the bottom and sticking it up that way. And I think that this would definitely benefit. This will definitely benefit from photographing it with an infinity screen, like with a sheet like we talked about, or even the one at the campus lab. Now, this photo, I don't know if it does it justice because it is laying flat, and that makes me feel like it's on a single plane. If it was standing up right here and there and taking the photo so that it's even at a slight angle, like it's turning away from the viewer or towards the viewer, I think that would really solve that issue. But looking at it, you can see that this comes towards us and that top fin kind of goes away from us a little bit. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. I think it looks really good. The way it's photographed, though, it makes it look really flat. So that is something that I would definitely change. um, rephotographing it. But I think that this looks like it's really pretty ready for the plaster, not plaster, paper mache. Now this one is kind of a fun one. I love the forms and the shapes. I think they did a great job with this. This is something that I think would benefit from mounting it on the pedestal at an angle, so that like this corner on the left is bottom corner is at one diagonal point and the bottom right corner is at another diagonal point. But I think that this would benefit from sanding because it feels like there's too abrupt of a transition from this vertical hole to the front surface. The surface feels too flat. There's not any rounding that's going on with several of these shapes. Now this one is rounded pretty well, and I think that that looks better. And some of these are rounded a little bit, but not very much. This person, I think, needs to go through and round these edges so that we don't feel like this front surface is flat. I would just use the sandpaper. I don't think you need to do any carving. Like right through here, this is jagged. You can see the tool marks. See the tool marks right through there. Just sand it, round those forms so that they feel intentional. I like how this is scooped out over here and it comes out other places, but this does need to be rounded throughout so it doesn't feel like this is almost a flat surface facing us. I love the silhouette of this. This is looking really good. But again, this is a 3D class, so we need those forms rounded. And like this top left nodule that's coming out, that's a really good type of solution. And I would consider doing that like to this one that's in the middle on the left-hand side, maybe these two or the bottom one on the right-hand side. But this just needs some sanding, making it smooth so that the front surface does not look flat. I think this is a really good start. I don't know why they applied the paint. We're not doing that until the very end of the semester. And one of the reasons is because I want to see what that foam looks like when you carve it so that you can do what tweaking you need to before you apply other things. Like this right here, the silhouette looks nice, but it is way too flat. Remember the flat surface, we can't have any of that flat surface of the original block showing, and this is very definitely that flat surface. This person, I would go in with the hasp because it looks like the surface is already hardened. Go in with that hasp and round these forms out and cut these grooves deeper so we can carve through and smooth it all around so it looks a lot more organic. This is a flat surface with some grooves cut in it, and these need to be three-dimensional forms like we talked about. I think this is an excellent start. They just need to go in, carve that deeper, and then round all the forms. We go back to that first one we looked at. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. And you see that those grooves are cut in, but they've rounded the forms between them. And this makes it feel, and it is much more three-dimensional. So that's what I would recommend with this one. And if that surface is already hard, just go in with you guys have carving tools and you guys also have scrapers or hasps, rasp that you can use to clean that up. And if that's a little bit difficult because the surface is already hard, you can also get, it's a cheese grater hasp that you can find at Walmart and hardware stores. They might even have it at Harbor Freight, but that has enough, you can grip it really well and get in there and get a lot of this material off so that these areas have this smooth rounding effect that I just looked at and we just talked about. You can also see the flat side of the cube here, or the original block there, flat side right there. That all needs to be smoothed and rounded so we don't have any of those original flat surfaces. But again, I really like the silhouette. I think this is a really fun idea that needs to be developed a little more. Now, I think this is a really good example of what we're looking for. Just like that first one we looked at, very organic, lots of movement and form, and this looks very controlled. There is a little bit of chattering right here, a little bit of tool marks there. This probably needs to be sanded just a little bit. If that is coming, right here, this is a tool mark, this is a tool mark, that definitely needs to be sanded. If this area right here is like that because of the sandpaper, you can work on filling that up in when you do the paper mache. This feels like it is, maybe it's a shadow, but it looks like the flat surface of the original block. So definitely use the paper and sand that down so you don't have any of that original flat surface of the block. But this form is absolutely beautiful. It's really nicely planned out and executed. So it's very well done. All right, excellent. What I'm seeing, I'm really liking. You guys are getting this. If you have any problems with understanding what's going on, let me know, and we'll talk it through. Again, you can video uh, call me, and we can talk about it. Last semester, I did that with several people, and that really helped them to understand what was going on with the assignment. Now, we do have a couple um, video presentations, and we're going to watch those right now. And after we get done watching them, we're going to talk about them. So we'll watch one, talk about it, and watch the next like that. Okay. So this person, I really need this file sent to me as a file that I can upload onto YouTube. Now, if you have already uploaded it onto YouTube yourself, send me that direct link so I can put a link to it and attach it to our class so that other people can see it as well. That's why I asked for the file itself, MOV, MP4, or WAV, because I can put it into our YouTube class YouTube channel and then everybody can see it. So we're going to go ahead and watch this. Let's see.
Today, I'm going to talk about the artist Do Hoso. He is a contemporary artist known for creating sculptures and large installations that explore ideas about home, memory, and identity. Instead of thinking about home as just a physical building, so often treats it as something emotional that is connected to personal experience. Many of his works recreate architectural spaces from places he has lived, including Seoul, New York, and London. These spaces are often made using thin, translucent fabric, which makes them feel almost ghost-like. Instead of simply viewing the work, visitors can walk through the installations and experience the space themselves. What I find interesting about So's work is how he transforms familiar places, like hallways or rooms, into something more reflective. His work encourages people to think about how memories and experiences shape the way we understand the spaces around us. One of the sources I used was the Art21 artist page, which includes videos where Do Ho-So talks about his work in his own words. One project shown there is called Rubbing/Loving, which he created in the New York apartment where he lived and worked for many years. For this project, So covered parts of the apartment with paper and used colored pencils to rub over the surfaces. This revealed the textures of things like light switches, door locks, and other small details in the space. What I find interesting about this work is that it focuses on everyday objects we normally ignore. By recording their textures, he captures the memory of the space and the time he spent living there. This project helped me understand how So thinks about home as something connected to experience and memory rather than just a physical building. This slide shows images of one of So's most well-known works called Fallen Star, located at the University of California, San Diego. The installation is a full-size house placed on top of a university building, but it is tilted at a sharp angle. At first, the house looks normal and familiar, but the tilted position creates a feeling of instability. Homes are usually associated with comfort and balance, but this piece intentionally challenges that expectation. When visitors walk inside, the slanted floor makes the space feel slightly disorienting. What stood out to me is how something that looks familiar can feel completely different just because of its position. It made me think about how environments can feel strange or unfamiliar even when they appear normal. Another source I used was the Victoria Miro Gallery page, which provides an overview of So's work and artistic practice. One thing that stood out to me is how often So returns to architectural space. Many of his installations recreate places he has lived, but they are built using translucent fabric instead of traditional materials. Because of this, the structures resemble real buildings, but also feel temporary and memory-based. When people walk through these installations, they move through spaces that represent the artist's past experiences. This approach shows how strongly So's work focuses on the relationship between people and the spaces they live in. This slide relates to the Smithsonian American Art Museum exhibition called Almost Home. The exhibition focuses on So's exploration of home, migration, and memory. Many of the works recreate rooms and architectural details from places where he has lived. The structures are made with translucent fabric, allowing viewers to see through the walls and walk through the spaces. Because of the materials, the installations feel less like solid buildings and more like memories of those spaces. I found the title Almost Home interesting because it suggests the feeling of being between places rather than fully settled in one location. That idea is very different from my own experience, where home has felt more stable and permanent. This slide connects to the Tate Modern exhibition called Walk the House. The exhibition includes a wide range of So's installations, sculptures, and drawings from across several decades of his work. One of the main ideas highlighted is how viewers physically move through the installations. Instead of simply standing in front of a sculpture, visitors walk through hallways and passages that recreate spaces from the artist's past homes. This creates a different experience because the viewer becomes part of the artwork. The translucent fabric also makes the structures feel temporary and connected to memory. Overall, Do Hoso's work stands out because it combines sculpture, architecture, and personal experience. Instead of creating traditional sculptures, he builds spaces that people can physically walk through. What I found most interesting is how his work transforms familiar architectural spaces into something that represents memory and identity.
Okay, I think this one is really a well done. I like how they walk through, uh, give you a little bit of background about Doho Sa, but they walk through each of these exhibitions and describe what's going on and their response to what's going on. I think that turned out really well. Um, and I want to look at this. I want you to see this as well. This is something that makes me excited because, I know that's kind of sad, but one of the things that is really important when you're doing writing, when you're doing research, is to have your citations correct. And I require MLA citation format for my class. Now, not every college uses that. Not every class requires that. I mean, it varies. It's different from class to class. But whatever citation source you use, you need to follow it. And I really like what this person has done. And um, because you look at how they've alphabetized this, and this is something that is interesting to me because AI still does not alphabetize things correctly. It follows what people expect as opposed to what is absolutely correct a lot of the times, and this is why you have to double check everything that the AI program you're using gives you. Notice R21. Okay, obviously that's alphabetical. Starts with an A. And the citation, however the citation is made, it's always the first letter of that first phrase. And notice that phrase ends with a period. Right here, the first phrase is Dohosa slash falling star. Now on this is actually not alphabetical. I mean, it looks alphabetical because you have all that, but this right here, Dohosa period, should actually be right here because this is the full phrase. Any phrase that adds anything past that, that needs to be alphabetized as its own phrase. So it actually should be this one first, this one next, this one because the phrase ends with or it goes Dohosa and then an A. This one Dohosa, then an F, and then Tate. So, and if you guys have something like that where it's just out of sequence a little bit, I will not be asking anybody to redo their videos for that reason. what you do instead, if you want those last couple points, is you're going to resubmit with your video plus a document with these citations in the correct alphabetical order. And then you'll get the full points. Notice that this person also, right here, they have an access phrase at the end of each of the citations, and that is just perfect. That's exactly right. So this whole presentation is beautifully done. The only thing that needs to be changed is alphabetization of these, and that could be put into a separate document, and then they would resubmit the video file plus that. So, and this one, I do need the video file so that I can put it into our playlist for our class. Or if you have uploaded it to YouTube already on your own personal YouTube channel, then send me the link to that so that I can put it into our playlist. All right, so excellent. That the way that they put it together and everything showed different kinds of work that he did. I thought was really well done. All right, now here's the next one. Okay, here we go.
Chelsea Olson, and I'll be giving a presentation on the life and work of Federico Uribe. Please don't be mad at me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Here's a picture of Federico Uribe. He currently lives and works in Miami. He was born in Bogota, Colombia, and he's currently alive today, making work as we speak, most likely. He has his own website that you can visit that displays several of his art pieces and a 360 gallery of his art pieces as well. Federico lives to use everyday objects to create sculptures, and he strives to make art that surprises and engages the viewer. Now I want to talk about pencils. Pencils is his #1 medium that he likes to use, though he does use a variety of others. Federico believes we have emotional, psychological, and cultural relations with objects. He uses pencils as an example. He explains that we all have a connection to pencils. He says that it brings a smile to people's faces because it brings them back to their childhood. Despite our skill level with pencils, we all have good memories attached to drawing and coloring in childhood. There's beauty in it, and he loves having that opportunity to have his art connect with the people in that way. He states that a lot of his art pieces are made with colored pencils, and pencils for this reason. This is so beautiful and touching to know this about him. I included a picture here close up on one of the images so that you could see how he utilizes the pencils. He crisscrosses them and lines them up, how he utilizes the colors and shades of the pencils, and how some of the pencils have tips, some don't. If you look at the top image, it's an image of a cat and it's made of completely of pencils. And this one down here at the bottom is a giraffe, also made of pencils, except for the eyeball. Everything is made of pencils. Federico says that he has dyslexia and believes that because of this, he does not see objects in the way other people see them. He sees objects as facts, textures, forms, and colors. He says that others relate to objects through their use, and he relates through these forms. He sees the object for what it can be and sees its potential. He likes to challenge the eye and create something that helps the viewer to see things in a different way. He is a happy person that loves a good challenge. He wants to make a statement with his art that brings the viewer back to what it came from. It sounds like what he really wants the most is to bring joy to others. And as you look at these art pieces, like look at the colors, they're just gorgeous. There's so many beautiful, vibrant colors here. and this aqua one. But he also, like, if you look at this lion, all the different things, look in his mouth, there's like the handle of a violin. It looks like he used some leather for the nose, and then there's like an actual eye in the eye socket. The detail is amazing. Federico speaks on being really attracted to building nonstop. He describes it as a compulsion, and he's so drawn to objects. He speaks on the reason to doing this type of art, connecting it to compulsion and emotional ties. Federico explains that people kill animals to create shoes. He created a piece where he disassembled shoes to make animals. People kill trees to make books, and he used books to make trees. He utilizes these objects to communicate a message to the viewer. If you look at the porcupine at the top, and the needles, like porcupines are pokey, and he used an element that's pokey. If you look at the sheep here in the bottom left corner, we shear sheep, and it's made of scissors. Like, the way he goes about imagining and creating these is, I think, also to build awareness around the object that he's utilizing as well. He recycles to create art. The New York Symphony challenges all the wiring, the New York Symphony changed all the wiring in their sound system and sent Federico tons of wire. He was puzzled with what he would do with all the wire he was given. He wants to repurpose and recycle material to create artwork. He created an image of someone thinking about what to do with all the wire. The foundation of Federico's work comes from paintings and then utilizes those skills to create these beautiful collages. Federico explains that he utilizes famous and well-known artists throughout history to create this piece. He looked at a painting in specific to create the lighting in one of his wire paintings. So I specifically made these images as large as I could so you could really see the detail in here of the wire. If you look at the cheetah, he swirls the wire around to create the spots on the cheetah. You could see some flowers and some plants. And then to the left, here we have a man. And like I said earlier, he utilizes the lighting from other paintings, like the man's face, how his left eye has this white wire underneath it, but then the right eye has this darker wire. So he looked at another painting of a man and saw how that artist utilized the lighting to create the person, and then he mimics that when he creates his wire paintings, and he calls these paintings, even though he's not using any form of paint, because most of his sculptures are three-dimensional. With these ones being two-dimensional, he's chosen to label them as paintings. But yeah, as you explore these images and take a moment to look at them, it's amazing how he can take these extra materials left over by other people and just create something beautiful with it. I also want to share with you my sources real quick. This is where I got all the information that's seen on the slide. I hope you enjoyed it and are more curious to learn more about Federico.
Oh, I wonder what that's going on. There we go. I'm curious sometimes as to why YouTube will give me different things to as the next video. But let's look at this really quick. I love that whole thing, but I want you to also look at how all of these are in alphabetical order. All of them have the accessed on date. That is exceptional. Nicely done right here. And I really like this because this person was pretty thorough on Federico Uribe. And I love how they showed not only 3D, both 2D and 3D work, but they also really went into depth as to how the objects were constructed, what Federico used to make them and everything. And I really like that. Where we look at the texture of the pencils used, look at the texture of the wire used, all that kind of stuff. This was nicely done. Well done with that one. So we're gonna watch another one now. And this is something that I've come to expect of UVU students, that when we start looking at these PowerPoints, they are all really well done. You guys do an exceptional job. Let's see. Okay, here we go.
An artist from Philadelphia who went to school for theoretical mathematics in Louisiana. He started sculpting in college. Trinity Root is the first piece I'd like to highlight today, as in many ways it encapsulates his entire body of work. On 9/11, a sycamore tree growing behind St. Paul's Church protected the building from the shock wave caused by the impact of the Twin Towers. The tree, however, did not survive. Steve Tobin saw the uprooted tree as a symbol for what had happened and decided to preserve it in bronze as a memorial for the disaster. It was a monumental effort, but it says a lot about Tobin as an artist, how he went about it. He had it craned out and shipped to a studio in Pennsylvania. There, they took the giant root system, weighing 600 pounds and standing 20 feet high, and made 200 separate casts of the tree. He said the process took 20,000 hours between him and his assistants. They didn't modify the tree root. They made an active effort to preserve the garbage embedded in it, the chainsaw gases, and even added dust and dirt from the courtyard into the red patina. Tobin says he seeks to inspire us to think of our histories, our mysteries below the surface. He seeks to create monuments that will last for generations. Up next are the squeezes. These are some of the more playful pieces in his collection, but the process is rooted in his understanding of physics and his background in theoretical mathematics. To shape these he squeezes a hand-size amount of wax between his fingers underwater. He does this to create an environment without gravity, as wax has the same density of water. He likes inventing processes that create the art rather than operating from a preferred medium. He only keeps about 1 out of 50 of these experimental sculptures, which he casts in bronze. For larger commissions like the one in this presentation, he will 3D print a copy of them in larger sizes and then cast them. Here's what he has to say about this piece. The theme of unseen power, the inside of the hand when squeezing, is the fundamental mystery and power of humanity. From birth, the instinct to squeeze, hidden inside the closed hand, remains. The Bones series makes perfect sense in the overarching context of his work. He describes in one interview that he doesn't seek to create beauty, but instead a sense of wonder in his work, art that would be an archaeological curiosity. When you compare this to our fascination with the Mayan ruins or the catacombs beneath Paris, large sculptures made of bones definitely fit right in with this genre of work. He commemorates memorials to power, monuments to life, and forces that once were mighty. This series is a celebration of entropy, the acknowledgement that all things decay. Whether it's the life that forged these bones or the sheen on the bronze cast. Fascinatingly, however, this is a contradiction in itself, as he also built these sculptures to last for centuries. Tobin was a glassblower in college. This was his first foray into 3D design. His works were occupied with making naturalistic sculptures, an attempt to freeze motion in time. The water in the above sculpture is made of glass, and the spray of thin little needles is also made of glass. In freezing nature, he adds a brutality to it. The termite mounds, on the other hand, are an example of his trying to celebrate unseen power. He describes it as wanting to highlight the unseen, ignored, undervalued forces. Since power is invisible, one must show the ends rather than the means. He cast 12 termite mounds from Africa in bronze, every detail of it preserved to the utmost degree to show the hard work of these armies of tiny bugs to the world. He even preserved the spiders who were living on the exterior of the mounds. The mounds range in height from 8 to 14 feet tall. Tobin is a man of both the process and the end result. To complete this project, he mortgaged his house. He commissioned the help of an entire village in Ghana to help dig them up, move them onto sheets of plywood, and drag them to where he could ship them to a studio. The project cost $600,000 of his own funds to complete. My personal favorite, the Exploded Earth series. In this series, he seeks to pay tribute to the Big Bang, the beginning of our universe. To complete these, he puts fireworks into balls of clay and then blows them up. The explosion distorts the shape of the clay, and the metals that create the colors of the fireworks in the air get embedded in the clay, giving them their rich coloration. He fires the result of this in his kiln and adds clear glass to the bottom, so the end result will resemble a crystal or a volcanic pool or a nebula or any other number of naturalistic forms. To quote Tobin, this series resembles many natural phenomenon because of the shared physics of creation. The earth is a big ball of exploded clay, so many pieces look like mountain lakes, hot springs, and other geological formations. The steel roots are his current project, one that he said he anticipates continuing till the end of his life. These are some of his most popular sculptures. They are displayed all over the world, and they can sell for $400,000 a piece. He creates each one without 3D modeling, letting it grow naturally through the process of creation. He describes this as old world craftsmanship. This series brings his work into the modern age, where instead of recreating naturalistic representational roots, he abstracts them into their simplest forms, creating new life, alien and yet familiar. They have a dancerly quality to them, resembling human and animal form in fascinating biomorphic abstractions. There are endless varieties of sizes and colors. They are in many ways his most anthropomorphic works, as if he got tired of trying to recreate nature's past accomplishments, and instead decided to turn his eyes towards the future and co-create with its forces. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy the work of Steve Tobin as much as I do. Steve Tobin is an...
Sorry about that. Let's see. I think Jared did a great job on this one. And extra, a crisp high five to him for including the term biomorphic abstraction. Notice that right towards the end. So good job on that. On this, we are looking at things a little bit out of alphabetical order. And again, that's something that you can do as a separate document and then resubmit with both the video file and that document. But for the rest of this, I think this person did just a really good job showing all the different kinds of stuff that Steve Tobin made. I mean, so we look at this right here, hearing the story about that. We learned about these, the bones. And I loved how this person showed us the artwork and then gave us story behind it and then tied it back to the artist's background, which is in theoretical physics. Why is he doing this? What does he do that leads him to make these things? And I thought this person did a really good job. Everything feels very consistent and everything ties together beautifully. So nicely done on that. All right, then this will be the last one that we look at today.
Oldenburg, a not so small production presented by Claire Anderson. Finding art everywhere. Claes Oldenburg had a hope to see art in everything around him. This is what I love so much about his work, is because it takes the subject matter, which is just everyday objects, a bag of fries, a dustpan, bowling pins, and it creates something unexpected. So he's taking something expected and making it unexpected through the use of scale, gravitational form, color, and even movement. Playing with scale. This is a project that I think shows his use of scale so beautifully. He's using the museum, as you can see at the top picture, as the net, right? He's using these large-scale objects in scale and proportion to one another. So Claes and his wife, Kosha, whom he married in 1977, worked in collaboration to scaling these shuttlecocks. He was known for his using space to complement his compositions and his design. As you can see in the shuttlecock's relation to the museum and their incorporation with their surroundings. And it's not just a shuttlecock, it's a headdress, it's a basketball net, it's these feathers that Claes and Kosha have combined to create something greater and something unexpected out of these almost humble and simple materials. Soft sculptures. So this was a project and an early movement in the work of Claes Oldenburg before he married Kosha van Bruggen in 1977. These works of art, while being large in scale, are not quite as scaled as his later works would be. But this is a good opening position to see how his work would evolve and how it grows. Something I love about these soft sculptures is the materials used. He uses vinyl and he creates this almost limp-like sculpture, and he relies on gravity to create the form for many of the soft sculptures, right? You see these cigarette butts kind of falling off this platform as gravity would have them do. And he would experiment with how everyday objects were seen, how they interacted with gravity, how they would kind of stay in this state of movement. And he would challenge these conceptions as well as the conceptions of traditional sculpture materials. He's moving to vinyl rather than wood or metal, which is super interesting to me. And it's super innovative. These are groundbreaking for his time, right? His collaboration. This is something that sets him apart from the other artists and is so intriguing to me, is his collaboration. Because for me personally, his collaboration with his wife, Kosha van Bruggen, actually makes his artworks even more monumental, even better for me. And I actually have come to love his installations with collaboration with his wife Kosha over his soft sculptures and over his earlier sketches. So they would collaborate on a lot of projects, for example, Spoon and Cherry, or also known as Spoon Bridge and Cherry. And it is a large scale installation of a spoon curving up to see a cherry resting at the tip of the spoon. It weighs 7,000 pounds, which is very large and is very monumental. And that is just going to show that this everyday spoon and this cherry can become something so monumental and something so large scale. It was built in 1988 by Claes Oldenburg and Kosha van Bruggen, and it resides in the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden. It serves as a water feature, displaying a bright red cherry at the top, shows how form, gravity, and an everyday object can create something monumental just with the play of color saturation. This silver, almost white spoon in contrast with this bright red cherry. And the scale, as you can see at the top picture, this is a maintenance worker working at where the stem and the cherry meet. And that just shows how large this sculpture really is. It takes a lot of maintenance, and that's something that kind of moves into Claes Oldenburg later works, where he does create these installations, and they have to be repainted, refinished. But they are such a monument, and they stand as such a symbol of culture and of his work, really. So Claes Oldenburg, as a developing artist, so he was an immigrant moving to New York from Sweden, and this is where he was influenced by a lot of street life, a lot of street art, and that's kind of what laid the groundwork for his later career. Pop art. He engaged with a lot of pop art in one of his earlier jobs of painting small replicas of food and other consumer products. Later, his marriage to Kosha and his collaboration would bring larger scale projects. And she was an art historian, and so this would bring another sense of analysis and historical influence into their work. As you can see in this dropped bowl with scattered slices and peels, I feel like it does a really good job showing that kind of pop art influence with the saturated colors, as well as that kind of curvilinear, and even the effect of gravity, right? You see this peel and it's kind of curving over as it's been almost snapshotted as gravity is taking its toll on it. And I love their work because it's so juxtaposing between something so expected, this apple, right? These apple slices that you typically eat, and then the peel, which you typically throw away, and kind of playing with that in an unexpected scale, in an unexpected curve, in an unexpected location. And I think that is what really makes Claes Oldenburg a very interesting artist, is his interpretation of the everyday and his inspiration from the everyday, as well as his collaboration and his ability to collaborate and make something even better. These are my sources that I used, and thank you.
This is another really good one, I think. I really like how this person shows, they gave basically a brief bio about Claes, and then showed a lot of the work. It gave context for the work in his life, and then kind of went doubled around again and talked about how each kind of element informed his life. I thought this person did a really good job of this presentation. And I was just pausing to look at um, the sources again. This person again did a really great job. Everything is alphabetized, and you see the access on date on everything. So I think this person did a really good job, a really solid job on this one. And it is exciting to me too to see that so many people appear to be excited about the artist that they picked. You know, I don't know. It would be interesting to find out if got excited because that was the person you wanted it from the beginning, or if you got excited just because as you learn more about them, they became more interesting to you. I think that's really fascinating. But everything I've seen, you guys have been doing a great job. I mean, beautiful artworks. The carvings are all looking really nice, and maybe some of them need a little bit more detail and stuff done, but they're all looking pretty good. And these presentations are looking pretty good. I do want to talk a little bit about that. One of the early assignments everybody needed to do was to declare whether you're going to do service learning or the artist research. And there's still 3 people that have not done that assignment. And until you do that assignment, you're going to see both the assignments for artist research and the assignments for service learning in your to-do list, which means it looks like you have more to do than you should. As soon as you pick one or the other, and that is in module 7.A, then I will take care of it right away. If I don't take care of it within 12 hours, just email me and remind me that you did that, and I will go through and remove those assignments that you don't need to do. So you will notice that there are assignments that have zeros on them and things like that. If they're several days out of date, overdue, or if it's like the attendance ones and it's the next day, I have put zeros down. But again, that is to let you know that you need to get those assignments turned in. As soon as you get those assignments turned in, email me if I haven't graded them yet. And I just realized this morning I have yet to grade the structure and skin ones. I will do that, and you'll see the grades on those. And if you need to fix them and rework them and resubmit, I'm happy to do that. So just let me know if you have any concerns about a grading, or contact me too if we need to have a better talk so that you have better understanding of what's going on. You know, we can talk through Teams or um, FaceTime or whatever. I mentioned that because last semester there were a couple students and who we did video call. We talked back and forth, and they showed me what they were working on, and I said, "Hey, that's really cool, but it doesn't quite fit the assignment." And we were able to hash that out, and that's what I'm here for. I want everybody to get an A out of this class, and there's no reason not to. If you have issues with understanding what's going on, or you don't know why I said something, let's talk about it so that you can have everything resolved. Now I want to show you, let's see, I'm going to do a screen share again. And then this will lead me into the last couple things I want to talk about. Okay, so this is where we're at right now, carb biomorphic abstraction. Get that done, get that turned in. We'll go and look at the rest on Wednesday. Now, one of the reasons why I talked about, you do the foam carving, that's what's there for. And then later on, there's paper mache. And then later on, the Mighty Voltron sculpture revisit. If you look at that, what we're talking about is applying texture and color to your carving. And how this works is our next module is going to be texture and light. Everybody's making 12 panels that are either half of them will be color collages and half of them will be texture collages. Each of these 12 panels should take about 45 minutes. If they take less than that, it shows up in your grade. Excuse me, it shows up in your grade. 45 minutes for each of these 12. What this assignment is, and we will talk about this next week, but what this assignment is designed to do is to help you to learn about applying texture and applying colors. And then after you do that, we're going to be working on paper mache. For the paper mache, you're going to take your foam carving. This is why we have a little bit of time in between so you can fix it and recarve or sand it down or whatever. Because you'll apply paper mache, you're going to do 2 layers, which are going to, the first layer is going to dry, then you're going to sand it, then you're going to apply the second layer and sand it so it's smooth. And then at the end of the semester, you're going to go back to this paper mache sculpture and you are going to apply texture and color to it from what you learned on this texture and light module. And that's the last thing we're going to be doing in the semester. And for this, you can cannibalize your previous sculptures. Make sure you got the grade that you wanted before you break them down, but you can cannibalize them and use them in your Mighty Voltron sculpture. I call it Mighty Voltron, where a lot of little robots come together to make a great big robot. I call it that just to be silly, but because you can use elements from all your previous sculptures to add to your foam sculpture after you apply the paper mache. And you can get texture that way. That's only one way you can get texture. We'll talk more about that later. But that's what the progression is there for. And that is why we go over the carved biomorphic sculpture. We're going to do it again next week, but I want everybody to get that right so that it's ready to apply the paper mache. This is why it's important to watch these videos as we go through the semester so you know what's going on and you understand. Something else that is coming up is, if you remember, right back here, applying the tools of artistic critique. We have to do a critique on your own work. We have to do a critique on somebody else's work. And this must be work for this class this semester. That's why I have everybody post their images in the chat and the discussion so that everybody can see everybody else's work. And you can do your own work too. The artist critique works is, the way that works is you're making a video where you just do a screen share of a static shot of the artwork you're looking at and apply the 4 tools of artistic critique, which are describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate. You're going to spend a minute on each one. And it is really important that you do the voiceover on that static image. I don't want you to feel like you need to hold up anything or anything like that. And it has to be work done for this class this semester. But it doesn't have to be your voice. If you don't want your voice to be recorded for this video that you turn in, that is fine. Write it out, read it aloud so that you get the time correct, and then have somebody else, a roommate or a family member, read it for you. Or you can even plug in your narration to AI and have an AI voice read it for you. I've had people where they've had a boyfriend, a grandpa read it, their son or daughter read it. I've also had people plug this in with voices that are historical, famous actors, as well as cartoon characters. Like Elmer Fudd, I think was the most fun I've heard. I We don't need to hear your voice. What we do need is a video with the static image of the work that's being critiqued, plus your narration in your voice or somebody else's voice. It does not have to be your voice. And when you do this and apply those four tools of artistic critique, when you're doing your own work, this works absolutely best when you look at it and when you describe it as if it is the first time you're seeing it. Do not talk about when I did this, when I did that, when I added this, when I added that. Please don't talk about it like that. Talk about it like as if your work is a stranger's work. And the reason why I'm stressing that is because when you do that, when you pretend that it's somebody else's work and you don't know who did it or what they were thinking, you will find out more about what you've done than you expect. And for most people, it demonstrates to them and lets them know, hey, I really am a pretty good artist. I do know what I'm doing. And that's why I want you to do it that way. So again, the discussion boards, we put photos up so that people can look and pick from the stuff that they see for this artistic critique. Notice it's due in about 4 weeks. So we'll talk more about that next week as well. But I want you to know that is coming up as well. Now you will notice we go down here. Next week, we'll talk about texture and light, but also contemporary processes and conceptualism. This is what I want to talk about. In your attendance for this week, you need to write 4 things about this video and then 1 thing about a video I'm going to have you watch called Plato's Allegory of the Cave. And it's 4 minutes and 32 seconds long. Why is that important? It is absolutely vital for us. And I want to talk about that. I'm also want to talk about a really good book too. And if you guys want to read it, that's fine. You check it out at the library anytime. Plato's Allegory of the Cave is essentially this. Imagine that you are among a group of people where your entire life you're sitting on the floor with your back to a low wall that's just above the height of your head when you're sitting down, and you are chained so that you can only see the wall ahead of you. This takes place in a cave where the only light comes from a fire that is behind you. And your entire life, you don't see other people in the cave other than, out of peripheral vision, you see the prisoners on either side of you. But your entire life, the things that you interact with are the things that pass between that fire that's flickering somewhere behind you and your back. All you see is the wall in front of you and shadows on the wall in front of you. And the sounds you hear come from behind you. You and you find out things when you see the shadow and somebody tells you what it is. After a while, you make those associations. So you think you know what a chicken looks like. You think you know what a horse looks like because when you see the shadow on the wall with that label given to it, you think, oh, well, that's what it is. That's what it is. Then imagine one day, and this is, again, Plato is talking about this allegory. Imagine that one day, one of those prisoners that's been forced, this is their whole experience, their entire lives, their chains are cast off and they are forced out of the cave. So as they're forced out of the cave, they see all their other prisoners that are chained up in the same way. They see that fire there, and they see that people were carrying things in between the fire and the prisoners' backs, so they could only see the shadows. And as they're going, they're forced outside. And when they get outside, they realize that there's this gigantic world. It's not just the cave. They see color now. They probably can't see anything for a long time because their eyes have to adjust to this bright light, but there is a bright light. They can see the light move through the sky, and there's light and dark, there's day and evening. they can see the moon, they can see trees and all these things that are moving around by themselves. They're not the shadow, they can see the actual object. And even weirder, if there's like a pool of water, they can see their own reflection. And they realize, oh, and they start after a while to realize this is my reflection. And they can see that the source of light is the sun. And this is all just completely blows this prisoner's mind. I mean, and after he finally adjusts to it, understands the relationship of himself to this real world, what in the allegory of the cave, he goes back to the cave and starts telling the prisoners, this is what I've seen. These are just shadows on the wall. The sounds you're hearing are just echoes. The real light is outside. It's not even in the cave. This is just fire, which is just a poor approximation of the sun, which is the source of the light. And, he describes what colors are. He describes what a reflection is. And these prisoners just think he's crazy. And they get angry at him and they shoo him away. Now, this whole allegory, the story that Plato wrote, he was talking about, the burden of glorious purpose, like Loki said in the Thor and the one of the Marvel movies. And what Plato, I think, is talking about is when people take the time to really process and think, and then after a while, maybe reach enlightenment. That enlightenment is kind of like seeing the outside world for the first time. When knowledge comes into your brain and you see that things are just the things we encounter day to day are pale reflections to what actual reality is. And but I think you can see what the allegory is there. As artists, we're kind of weird. We see the world in a different way than everybody else. We don't show people what they already see. We show people what we think about what we see. And the objects that we make are intended to kind of express or are intended to communicate those thoughts that we have. Another really impressive thinker that I think is just amazing is Wassily Kandinsky. He had synesthesia his entire life, and so he would paint music. But one of the books he wrote was Spirituality and Art, or The Spiritual in Art. And in that, he talks about the artist being a prophet. Now, we're not talking about a religious prophet, biblical prophet or anything like that. But what he talks about is that an artist, because of the way they process information and deliver that information to people, and without the limitations of words, artists have the dual role of prophets historically. One is they are self-critical of the culture that they're in. Remember, critical is a synonym for intentional. So when an artist does self-critique of the culture that they live in, they are just being intentional about the thinking that they process regarding the culture that they're in. An artist's job is not to tear things down. That's not what we're supposed to do. We build, we create. And ideally, we help people to think outside of what they're familiar with. So an artist's role is to reflect on the culture around them and think about it with intention. And then the other role is to kind of share with people what that means, what that could be, what kind of future are we going forward into, what kinds of consequences will come about because of this, what that is going on now. And an artist's role is not to produce propaganda and tell people what to think. That's not what we do. What we are here to do is to share people what we think in such a way that they can finish the thing off with their own thoughts and reactions to what they see that we've made. So we're not there to tell people this is how you think about it. What we are there to do is this is a situation, or this is something that the situation makes me think about, or these are the thoughts that I have. And then invite viewers to look at what we're doing and to start processing that new information. The best art is hopeful. the best art is optimistic, because artists create with the intention of inspiring, in part, other people to create as well. And creation, kind of by its nature, has to be hopeful and optimistic. I'm saying all this because as we move on to the sixth module, there's a principle, and we'll talk about this again, but I want people to start digesting this now. And this principle, it's always been kind of in the background of artistic creation, but it really started having its own voice in the late 50s and early 60s in the US and Europe. All the art types of stuff that we've been making, and all the art that you make generally in your university classes, you use tools like brushes and digital brushes, or chisels and hammers, or pencils and pens. You use those tools to create an object. You use those tools to uh, change materials. Like we've used paper, we've used wire, we've used sticks and foam, all that kind of stuff. You use those two things to create an object. Or if you're a 2D person, you're using brushes and paint to create a painting, or you're using digital brushes and a digital platform to create a digital painting. You know, these things but that thing that you've created with those tools and materials becomes the object. And that object is identified as the art. We use the scrapers and the sandpaper and the foam and as the tools, and the foam as the material to build um, the finished object of art, which is the biomorphic abstraction sculpture. However, behind all that, the artist is also using our thoughts to kind of transform the thoughts of the person who views or encounters the work that we produce. That's why we're not there to tell people what to think. We're there to invite people to think about whatever it is. And that the very best art is going to be stuff that you can go back to over and over and over again. And every time you go back to it, you find something else to appreciate about it or to enjoy about it. And one of the reasons is the first time you encounter it, it changes you. And then that changed person helps develop the person that you are when you encounter it a second time. And it changes you again. And that change, do you see what I'm saying? That process continues every time you encounter art. The best art is like that. There's always something new to learn. It is not telling you what to think, it is inviting you to think. And when people focus on that process of thinking, that's when we get into what conceptual art is. Conceptual art uses that art object that is made as the tool and the material to sculpt something. And the thing that is sculpted in conceptual art is specifically the viewer's encounter, what they think about that encounter. And we'll talk about more about this, but in conceptual art, you're a 3D artist that is creating objects for people to encounter specifically because you want them, you're sculpting the thoughts that they are developing when they encounter the thing that you made physically. And conceptual art works best when people come to it and they think, oh, this is interesting. And then it starts growing on them and they start thinking about it. Why did this artist do this? What are they doing? What are they engaging? I am engaged. I'm curious now. What am I supposed to be thinking about? Or even, this is interesting. It reminds me of this stuff. It reminds me of that stuff. Like Dohosa does a really good job of that. And we saw that in the PowerPoint presentation earlier, where the person giving the presentation even said, Dohosa is not sculpting architecture. He's using this diaphanous material in a way that made her think of things like memories and these kind of emotional encounters we have with property that is labeled as home, because he brings to mind, Dohosa brings to mind the associations we have with things like home and places we've lived before, because he's sharing the places that he's lived in before. And those objects that he's made almost become the tool and material to get you to start thinking about memories and ghosts of places that you've lived in. And I think it's really fascinating. But we'll talk about more about that later. Some people don't like or get conceptual art because they think it's a waste of time. And I will be completely honest. I think most of the time, I'm not going to say most of the time, I'm not going to put a perspective on it. I think some people have labeled their work as conceptual art because they haven't gone through the intentional thought process to actually be able to defend the validity of whatever it is that they're doing. I don't think you always need to do that, but if you don't get something, you don't understand it, doesn't seem to have effort or purpose behind it, and the person claims rather too quickly that it's conceptual art, I'd be just a little bit wary of that. But we're going to look at a couple specific conceptual artists, and they do some pretty amazing stuff. Just as an example, Jean-Claude and Christo are going to be one of the artist teams we're going to look at. They wrapped a lot of stuff, and when they wrap things, immediately when you see something that's wrapped, it engages your curiosity. You want to see what's under the wrapping. That's how we're engineered. That's how we're raised and engineered to think. And I love that because the simple fact of wrapping makes it so that we automatically engage at a deeper level with whatever it is that's wrapped, regardless of what it is. And then we can start thinking about all the connotations behind the wrapping and what the wrapping material is. If it's saran wrap, like used in a meat packing plant, it's going to mean something to us emotionally that's very different than if it was wrapping paper for a present. I hope you see where I'm going with that. But those are the things that we're going to be looking at next. And so I want everybody to have their foam sculptures done by Wednesday so we can start the process of going on to the tile and color module. And then after that, we're going to do paper mache, then contemporary art processes, which is the conceptual art pieces. And finally, we're going to do our final shebang where we go at our paper mache sculpture and apply gobs of color and texture to it. So thank you very much for being with me today and or of course watching this recording later. I hope you guys have a really fun and enjoyable spring break and get caught up and stuff. Again, if you see zeros, that's to remind you to turn stuff in, turn everything you can in. If you see less than a perfect score on anything, read my notes, and if you don't understand them, talk to me and then fix it and resubmit. All right, guys, thank you so much. Be safe, take care of yourselves, and I will see you on Wednesday.